We are ready now for our Congressional District 8 Forum. On the screen is Cheryl Collier.
Thank you. Good evening. Yes, my name is Cheryl Collier, and I am the president of the League of Women Voters for West Contra Costa County. West Contra Costa County and Diablo League would like to extend a warm welcome to all that are here this evening. So our format tonight is a webinar format, which basically means that there won't be any chat or questions in the feature tonight. All questions tonight are coming and have been submitted by League members. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn you over to the moderator, and she will be the moderator for the Congressional District 8 Forum tonight. And Martha, I'm getting ready to mess up your name, your last name. Goralka. Okay.
I have two hard names, Martha Ely Goralka. I'm your moderator for this evening's Congressional District 8 Candidates Forum. Tonight's forum is co-sponsored, as you were told, by the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa and the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley. With technical assistance from CCTV, there'll be timing, taping, and rebroadcasting this forum. Now I'd like to introduce you to tonight's candidates in alphabetical order. They are John Garamendi, Rudy Recile, Christopher Riley, Edwin Rutsch, and Cheryl Sudduth. Welcome to our League of Women Voters Candidates Forum for Congressional District 8. The format is you'll have 3 minutes each for opening remarks in alphabetical order. Then we'll have a question and answer session for about 30 minutes. You'll each have 1 minute to answer every question. I'll do my best to rotate who goes first for each question. Personal attacks aren't permitted. Statements about other candidates must be in the public record or won't be allowed. I'll interrupt by saying thank you if your comments or answers are taking more than the allotted time. Finally, each of you will have 1.5 minutes for a closing restatement and reverse alphabetical order. I'll say thank you if you're taking more than your allotted time. You'll finish your sentence and we'll go on to the next candidate. So now we'll proceed with opening statements, beginning with John Garamendi. John.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And congratulations and a big shout out to the League of Women Voters. Over the years in my elected office, I've always participated in these debates, and opportunity not only to get my own issues out, but also to learn about my opponents. The process of elections is an extraordinary important time for us to learn not only about the issues, but about each other and ultimately about whoever will represent us. For me, it's a great privilege to be able to come back to the 8th Congressional District. I've represented parts of this district for the last 12 years. In the previous redistricting, I had Antioch, El Cerrito, and Kensington in my district, including all of central Contra Costa County, also Fairfield and Suisun City. Those two cities remain in the new district, along with Vallejo and all of the communities on the West Contra Costa, as well as Antioch, Pittsburgh, Bay Point, and Martinez. So I'm really very, very excited about this district. It's a district in which my experience here in the state of California as a state assembly member, senator, and as insurance commissioner twice, as well as lieutenant governor, and my experience in Congress gives me an opportunity to help solve many of the issues and bring about the opportunities that this district has. This is a district that is very, very different from any other part of California. It's an industrial district. The 5 oil refineries in Northern California in place. My history as being greener than greens, dating back to the 1970s when I authored the first laws to establish wind, solar, and conservation tax credits, is still with me. Now the issue is, how do we transition these refineries? How do we maintain the employment opportunities? What are the potential and what are the downfalls that are out ahead of us? I have many ideas. I'd be happy to put those forward. As a member of the senior member of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, the massive infrastructure jobs bill was largely written in our committee. It is specifically designed to deal with the transportation and infrastructure issues of this district. Districts that have been left behind, districts and communities that have been marginalized by a host of pre-existing problems. And so that infrastructure bill is designed to deal with the transportation issues, the rail issues, the transit, all of that, including sanitation, water, and beyond, including one thing that's exceedingly important, not necessarily a new, but for the law, a new infrastructure, which is the high-speed broadband and internet. Very important in parts of this community. On the housing side, a major challenge for all of California, and particularly in this district. As the author of the reauthorization bill, that would be the Home Act, we're looking at putting billions of dollars of federal money into supporting affordable housing throughout the United States. Much of that will find its way into this district. And of course, climate change remains out there, an issue I've worked on through my entire career in many, many different iterations. Perhaps the question will bring me to more full answers on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now it's time for Rudy Roselli. Rudy.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Major Rudy Roselli. I'm a retired Army major. I served in the military for 26 years, all the way, working from all the way from being a combat line officer all the way up to working at the highest levels within the Pentagon and working with various members of Congress to answer various congressional inquiries that they presented. So working in Washington, D.C. is not something that's new to me. I've done it for over 12 years, the last 12 years of my career. And in my career working in the military, I worked on everything from contracts to managing budgets, creating budgets, setting up budgets, and being accountable for all the various monies that we were able to obtain. When my mother came here in 1960, it took her 16 years to become a citizen. She had to renounce her citizenship from the Philippines in order to become a citizen of the United States. And 12 years after that, I took an oath, just like she took the citizen's oath. I took an oath to become a military officer. And that oath includes to defend the Constitution of the United States and make sure that everything that I did helps the citizens of the United States in all ways possible. It's really important to me. I mean, when my last duty station was in California, I fell in love with the state, and so did my wife. And we decided to stay here and put roots down here. And we are working here in the community. My wife works for the Veterans Administration, and I'm a member of the VFW and several other community organizations. And it's important to me that we have the best representation for our district that we here in California. A lot of things are changing. A lot of things need to be supported. A lot of people need the help. Crime is on the rise. Homelessness is a problem. Education in our schools is a challenge. We need to make sure that we have the best schools for our children in this state, in our district. So we need to make sure that these things are taking place. And I believe that I can do these type of things and help these type of issues that we have in our district when you elect me to Congress. And this is more about the people finding a good candidate to be their representative. And I will work hard to make sure that I keep the people informed and have a level of transparency as I conduct my efforts in Washington. So you can look for me and look towards me and support me because I believe I can do that job.
Thank you. Christopher Riley.
Hello, my name is Chris Riley. I am the son of an immigrant from El Salvador. My mother came here during the Civil War, and she joined the U.S. Army, where she met my father here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I am, very proud of this, mixed heritage that I have, and I am, so blessed to be in a country where that is possible. There's a lot of other places where just my existence couldn't happen. And it's great for me in this district, especially because this is the most diverse district in the state. And as I think of this district and diversity, I think we need leadership that is representative of the district. We need a representative who has lived the life of a minority, who has gone through the struggles. So I am excited for this district and for this state going forward. I was working in San Francisco as a union print worker, and I was working throughout the East Bay, in Richmond, and in Vallejo. And in the run up to the 2016 election, as I saw what was happening with our politics and with our country in the election of Donald Trump, I knew that I needed to do something. So I left my work at the union print shop and I went to law school because I wanted to prepare and be able to do something more for my community and to make sure that the Latinos like me that were being disparaged every day by the White House in 2016 to 2020, that we would have a voice that would allow us to not be looked down upon by our government or our government officials. So this has become very important to me. And as I was studying, I got really involved in voting rights issues. And I created a documentary that looked at the issues of election security and election finance. And I was honored to be able to interview great American heroes like Tom Ridge and others. And I was able to learn so much more about the process that it led me to know that I needed to step up and join this race, because not only am I a minority, but I'm also a millennial. And I think that the young people of millennials and Gen Z, we're looking for somebody who's going to take the next step. We need new leaders to start taking responsibility for our future. And the only way we can do it is by standing on the shoulders of those that have come before us. Great leaders like Rep. John Lewis, great leaders like Garamendi has been for this area in California. But I think as we go forward, we need new ideas. We need new leaders, and we need leaders that lead through service. Thank you.
Cheryl, Edwin Rutsch.
Hi, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for this opportunity to speak and for this invitation. My name is Edwin Rutsch. I'm founding director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. And for the past 14 years, I've been working quite intensely to create a more empathic society based on mutual listening, dialogue, constructive dialogue, and I've been doing all kinds of different projects. My center has many different projects that we do in that regard. We have the largest resources on the topic of empathy and listening on the internet. We have done mediation with all kinds of different people all around the country and the world, for that matter. When Trump was elected president, there was a lot of right-wing groups came to Berkeley and the East Bay here. We have an empathy tent that we took out and set up and offered listening to the right wing as well as the left wing that came out and counter-protested. And we offered listening and dialogue to both sides, as well as sat them down and did mediation between the different sides. There's a documentary that you can see on my website, edwinforcongress.com, that actually shows us doing the mediation, kind of gives a deeper context to that. And what I'm really concerned is about the growing polarization that's happening in the country. We have a lack of trust, a growing lack of trust between the different sides, and I want to bring the sides together, and I have experience in doing that. The first thing I did running for office here was to reach out to the other candidates and say, hey, come, let's get together and let's talk about how we can bridge the divides in our country. I was able to talk with Cheryl, thanks for joining us, me and Christopher, and we had a really great discussion. Rudy's time schedule didn't allow for it. And we did invite John Garamendi, multiple emails, multiple invites, never heard anything. We still want to have a dialogue with John, a more in-depth, we call it empathy circle dialogue, where people really listen to each other in more depth. So I would like to take the opportunity to invite John to take part in an empathy circle with us, to really talk about how we can work together to bridge our divides in our communities and in our country. This polarization that's happening, I find, is very detrimental. We're in a negative cycle, and it's affecting our families, our communities, and our country. And we need to be able to address this and bring people together, which I believe I can do. Thank you.
And now Cheryl Sudduth.
Good evening. Thank you, League of Women Voters. I am Cheryl Sudduth. I'm a mom, wife, scientist, and your neighbor here in the 8th District. I'm running for Congress in the 8th District because I believe that our community deserves a Congresswoman who is and has been a resident of our district. I have the great honor of serving my community in elected and appointed offices. And as a volunteer public servant here is almost 30 years of public and private service. I have negotiated worldwide contracts and closing billion-dollar deals right here, working with Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and including working with our state legislators, Senator Skinner and our state senator Skinner, Assemblywoman Wicks, Representative Robert Lee, Representative Mark DeSaulnier, Representative Eric Swalwell, our former Senator Boxer, Speaker Pelosi, even Representative Garamendi, while working with the President's Commission for People who are Blind or Disabled, creating thousands of federal jobs, building housing, establishing healthcare programs. In addition, my direct experience in international contracting, having lived, worked, and volunteering in over a dozen countries, managing and negotiating contracts in 9 languages, in water and wastewater, and in the environmental sciences, and as a current contract services and procurement officer at AC Transit, will serve this district well in Washington. I'm running for Congress because I've always believed that my impact doesn't hinge on having a certain title, nor does it stop at arbitrary city or town boundary lines within our district. Babies are still starving and people are still dying. And that's why I've spent my life fighting for healthcare, social justice, and human rights and voting rights and more. I've learned a long time ago from the lessons of great civil rights and social rights and union leaders that came before us that the fight is always more than just the current injustices we face in housing or food or water or education or healthcare or the criminal punishment system. It's always about the people. Concentrarse en la gente, el nosotros no el yo. We focus on the people, the we, not the me. It's more than past time that this district that has been so overlooked benefits from a representative, a congresswoman who is unbeholden and unbought by any corporation or group or special interest. My special interest is the people, and I will fight every day for the people and bring back the resources that we need in this district. And I will be so honored to have your vote and your confidence and support to make a shared vision of a California that works every day for everyone to make it a reality. Gracias.
Well, thank you all. Now for the next approximately half an hour, I'll read written questions submitted by league members, and I'll rotate who answers first. So each candidate will have 1 minute to answer, and I'll do my best to ensure that each of you gets an opportunity to answer every question. And if I skip somebody, be sure and let me know. So our first questions, we're starting with Christopher Riley. And the question for all of you is, what are the most pressing environmental issues facing the United States and the world? And how do you plan to address them? Chris.
Thank you for that question. Unfortunately, it's a long list, especially here in California. Water is not only a problem in drought, but also as we look further out, we have fears of rising sea levels that threaten our coastal cities. And as part of the drought, we also have an increasingly worse fire season every year that not only is destroying property, but really destroying the natural beauty of our state. There's no one single silver bullet that we can use to end climate change, but there are so many things that we need to be doing when it comes to capping carbon emissions. But also we need to be funding more technologies and leading not only into electric, but also trying to find other ways of creating energy that does not cause pollution, but also batteries aren't the final answer. We're strip mining mountains in the West to receive the minerals.
And now John Garamendi. John.
Thank you very much. It's climate change. It affects every single thing that Chris just talked about, and it's climate change. We simply have to reduce our carbon emissions and do it very, very quickly. Do it in a way that we're able to maintain our energy supplies, which are critical to everything we do, and it can be done. Solar, wind. The very first wind turbines in California came about as a result of my legislation in 1979, 78. Carried on with that work all the way through dealing with the Arctic, dealing with the Antarctic, dealing with moving away from carbon fuels. My record is very clear as Deputy Secretary of the Department of Interior, where I worked on these issues, moving America away from this, dealing with the issues of the oil companies drilling on federal land, removing coal from federal land. In the run-up to the Kyoto conference, 5 of us at the Clinton administration wrote the American agenda for the Kyoto Climate Conference. Unfortunately, the work of that conference was not carried on because of the US Senate torpedoed it.
Now, Edwin Rutsch.
Yes, I would agree with John that the climate change, global warming is the primary environmental problem at the moment. And the way that we address that is, one, we need to be able to work together. We have to be able to bring the different stakeholders together to have to develop mutual understanding, and that starts with listening and dialogue. There's a lot of different stakeholders. I'm not an expert in any of the areas, and I can't, but I will bring people together to dialogue about this and to develop trust. One of the problems we have is with the polarization, the sides don't trust each other. And then with that lack of trust, nothing gets done. So what I want to do is bring the sides together, which I've been doing. There's hundreds of these dialogues that we've held online that are available, and you can see for yourself how that works. And so that's going to be the number one process that we do, is bring people together.
Thank you. Rudy Roselli.
Yes, climate is changing. It is an issue that we have here on our planet. And when I say the whole planet, it is the whole planet, because there are other countries out there that are generating way, way more carbon emissions than the United States. But here in the United States, electricity is not, we need to find a way to become energy independent. And that energy independence is something that we need. We cannot be reliant on other countries for our energy. And so far as climate is concerned, making sure that we have the ability for our vehicles to be able to transit to and from across the United States, and having those electrical infrastructures in place so that that can happen. It's very difficult to drive across this country just on pure electricity. So we have to have a balance between the use of fossil fuels and using green energy to make sure that we remain our energy independent, so that we can have a way to maintain our way of life.
And Cheryl Sudduth.
Can you read the question again for me?
Sure. What are the most pressing environmental issues facing the United States and the world, and how do you plan to address them?
Okay, so the most pressing issues in the United States is not just climate change, it's a big thing, but is that we depend too much on extractive emission economic sources, and that we don't have the basic clean air, clean water, safe food in many of the communities that suffer the most. And part of how we can solve that, and that's all across the world. How do we solve that? United States, we can pass the Green New Deal, and not just the Green New Deal when it deals with clean air and clean water, but also when it deals with homes. How do we build homes? How do we build businesses? We can pass the Green New Deal for that. We can increase environmental protections for not just frontline communities, but for those people who are suffering the most. We can ratify the international environmental and climate treaties that the United States has signed on to, but is not ratified and not put into action. And we can use community-led transitions, especially here in this district, from the 5 local refineries that are the most egregious in our area. We've already started that with the BACMED and in Rule 6.5 in this district. Thank you so much.
Now, our next question, we're going to start with Rudy Roselli. How can Congress best support education in the U.S., and how do you plan to do that?
Congress can help education the most by providing those tax incentive to various different places and corporations that can support our schools. our schools are underfunded across the board, and trying to get that funding there is very difficult to do. And especially when you're trying to ensure that it makes it to the school. So making a tax incentive so that people who donate towards schools and donate if their corporation, if it's a company, if it's a local company that provides after school programs or provides for our various schools, will definitely help our education system here in the United States. But we have to incentivize those type of things, and taking more money from the government isn't always the answer for it. The United States government gives plenty enough to the education system, but we also need to get our local people involved with our education.
Edwin and Rutsch.
Yes, in Congress, one of the first things I would do is put a focus on developing relational skills in the schools. We have a deficit, an empathy deficit in the country and in the schools, I believe, and know for that matter. And I would focus, I think we need $10 billion for 10 years to do a relational training and to do practices, different practices that are based on mutual listening. We learn about the government, but we don't learn about how to actually listen and dialogue with each other. And that needs to be a primary focus, as well as we need Congress, not just to be giving money for this, but actually modeling it. We need the Congress members to actually come together, the left and the right, and actually talk to each other and work on these issues together. So it's foundational is those relational skills.
Thank you. Christopher Riley.
So I am currently a high school teacher in the East Bay, and I know how much we need in these schools. So many of the schools are underfunded. So there absolutely does need to be funding that can go to schools, especially in minority areas or areas that just don't have the funding from property taxes. But also the research shows that it has to start early. We need universal pre-K so that, you know, from a young age, students can start and get ahead and advance through not only high school, but when they get to college, we cannot force them into debt, and we cannot allow the current $1.9 trillion of student debt to continue to keep people who might want to choose teaching as a profession, but can't afford it on such low salaries when they have to pay $1,000 or $2,000 a month in student loan payments. So there are so many things we need to do, but I think canceling the student debt, not only for teachers, but for all Americans right now, would allow more people to go into the teaching field.
Thank you. Cheryl Sudduth.
Repeat the question. I want to make sure I'm answering your actual question.
How can Congress best support education in the US, and how do you plan to do that?
So first of all, invest in public education. We need to invest in public education. We need to put our money, our budget is a reflection of our actual priorities. So we need to start off with that, because we failed to equitably provide quality public education to our children, especially in lower income and majority minority school districts. Dismantle the school to prison pipeline. We have to invest in public Wi-Fi infrastructure in our school districts. It's not enough to give a child a computer and send them home and they cannot access Wi-Fi. We need to break down racial segregation in our school system, and Congress needs to support that, support teachers' unions. We need to make sure that Title I education funding is actually funded. And we need to make sure that we stand up to the privatization of public schools. We have to make public higher education and trade school free and cancel student debt, all of it. If we can fund private corporations, then we can make sure that all student debt is canceled, including that the parents have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And John Garamendi.
Thank you. I want to thank the participants in this. Each and every one of you came up with some very good proposals along the way. Bottom line, education is the most important thing that any society can do for itself and for the future. A well-educated society, and most all of the problems that we'll discuss tonight, will find a solution. The federal government has a very, very important role in this. Certainly pre-K can and should be done. In the Build Back Better legislation, many of the solutions that have been put forward by my colleagues on this call are in the Build Back Better legislation, which we put together in the House of Representatives. Many of the ideas in that came from work that I and others in California have done. Debt forgiveness, absolutely. Pre-K, absolutely. Daycare, necessary. Research, support at the universities. All of those things are critically important. If we make those investments, then we can do it. I would suggest to you that my work on the Armed Services Committee has led me to believe that we're wasting vast sums of money in the military, particularly on our nuclear armaments. I can go into that later at another time. I believe my moment is up. But thank you very much.
The next question, we're going to start with Edwin Rutsch, and the question is, what types of immigration reform do you support? Can you get immigration legislation passed? I guess that should be, can you get any immigration legislation passed?
Well,
Edwin.
that's, yeah, thank you. That's addressing the problem of the polarization again. This is not the immigration issue is not the only one that's being held up by the polarization. And unless everyone comes together and all the stakeholders come together, including the people who are immigrants, they should be able to come to the table and share their views. And we need to create spaces to dialogue about this and probably use other formats. I totally respect the League of Women Voters. I've seen your debates. I really appreciated them. But having 1 minute for each person to talk about these is not like the most efficient way of having a dialogue about this. And what I would recommend is the League of Women Voters co-host some empathy circles with us, where the candidates actually come together and speak for 2 hours on one of these topics, like we did about the polarization. So I would suggest trying some different practices and processes to address these issues.
Thank you. Cheryl Sudduth.
Sorry to do this to you, Miss Martha. Tell me the question.
What types of immigration reform do you support? Can you get any immigration legislation passed?
Okay, can anybody get any legislation passed in the environment we're in right now? But here's immigration rights. I support equity in everything. And I think that one of the things that we have is we have a really inhumane immigration system right now that has tarnished this so-called American dream. The dream is foreclosed. Immigrants come to this country seeking a better life for themselves and their families, but they don't get it. We have a mass deportation of certain sectors, and we don't let certain people into this country. It depends on what country you come from. So we have to enact a just pathway to citizenship for all of the 11 million undocumented immigrants we have in this country. But that doesn't happen because it depends on where you come from, what you look like, and who is making the call. So I support an immigration system that allows for a righteous pathway to citizenship, but that does not discriminate. We have an EEO principle in this country, and I support that. It doesn't discriminate based on what country you come from.
Thank you. John Garamendi.
Thank you very much. Extremely complex issue. However, the House of Representatives has recently passed a comprehensive immigration reform. In that reform, we deal with those undocumented people that are in the United States now, give them the proper documents, assuming that they have been lawful, that they have been working, perhaps raising their family here. Those people would immediately receive documentations and on a path to citizenship, not an automatic. Also, a major farm worker bill has passed the House of Representatives. We also deal with the issues that we now have on the border, providing additional personnel, particularly the immigration judges that are necessary to quickly, fairly, and appropriately handle the various cases, asylum cases, and other cases that come before the judges. We need to always be very, very careful how we deal with this. We can never, ever allow the kind of thing that Trump did, separating families.
Rudy Roselli.
Yes, we live in the freest, most prosperous country in the world, and everybody's trying to get here. And the one thing that we do have is an immigration process that's in place, but it's not being used. And we need to make sure that every person that comes here goes through that immigration process. My mother came here, and it took her 16 years to get through that process. And there are millions of people around the world that want to come here to become citizens of the United States, and they must go through that process go through our immigration process to make sure that they become lawful citizens of the United States. We need to make sure that we secure our borders and make sure that only those that make it through the process get into our country. We should be picky about who comes here because we do have the best resources and the greatest country in the world. And we should be sharing those with the people that go through the process and follow that process properly. Should we give a pathway to citizenship? Yes, we should. We should find that pathway for citizenship for those that are already
Thank
here.
you. Christopher Riley.
This is a really important issue to me as my mother and her family all came here as immigrants. And this country is a beautiful melting pot full of immigrants. But we need to make sure that people aren't living in fear of being deported every day or being arrested by ICE. We need to have a pathway to citizenship for all those that are in the country and have not committed any violent crimes. We need to make sure that dreamers can stay in the country and not be in fear and go to college. And there is a system in place, but it's very, it's backed up. We need more judges and we need more lawyers. There were stories of children who were told to defend themselves in immigration court by a judge and said that they didn't need a lawyer because they could understand the law. And that's absolutely outrageous that we would expect children from other countries to be able to represent themselves in court. So we need more immigration courts, more judges, more funding for public defenders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So question for Cheryl, this is, you're going to start this one out. How can we best support democracy in the world?
My favorite word, equity. So we can have empathy for other countries. We can exercise our power as one of the leaders of the free countries of the world. But what we cannot do is use that type of power to at the expense of the American people. So I think the best way to support democracy in the world is to be a leader in the same type of principles that we purport to support. So if we're going to say that we are a democratic force, if we're going to say that we support equity and everything else in the world, then we have to be the prime, we have to show that kind of leadership right here at home. We can't say one thing and do the other. We can't be the ism. We can't have all the isms going on in this country and then try and do something else. We start here at home.
Thank you. And Rudy Roselli.
Yes, we live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And we need, and I agree exactly with Cheryl, we need to be leading in that freedom. Other countries are trying to achieve what we have here. Some are doing it good, some are doing it bad, but we need to be able to support those countries that are trying to make sure that democracy is happening, such as Israel. Israel is a democratic country. They support all kinds of different people throughout the world. They support each other and they support the other countries around them. We need to be looking at making sure that we have the appropriate relationships with other countries and ensure that we support democracy when we see it and when it happens. And when it's being threatened, we need to be able to stand up as well, just like we're doing in Ukraine by providing the appropriate arms to them. And we started providing those arms early on. And we need to make sure that we're looking at things of that nature and supporting those countries that are democratic.
Thank you. Christopher Riley.
Yeah, so we can talk about supporting other nations and their democracy, but at the same time, we're allowing states in the South to pass voting laws that are making it harder for our own citizens to vote. Voter ID laws, or when you have states and counties that are closing voting areas in minority communities. And you have places where the line is 6 or 8 hours to vote. This is unfathomable for what should be the beacon of democracy. So we need to get our house in order first. We need to make sure that we pass comprehensive voting rights bill that protects the votes of minorities, of African Americans, of Latinos, of the entire community before we're going to go to other countries and tell them how they're supposed to do democracy.
Thank you. Edwin Rutsch.
Okay, so I talk about empathy over and over again. You're probably sick of hearing it, right? I wear it on my t-shirt. I have the "we listen" here. So again, empathy is core to this. It is central to democracy, and it's just not me, but it's also Joe Biden. And I want to read a quote from our president. He says, "For empathy is the fuel of democracy." Let me say it again. Empathy. Empathy is the fuel of democracy. A willingness to see each other, not as enemies, but as neighbors. Even when we disagree, to understand what the other person is going through. And that is the core of democracy. It's people being able to listen to each other. A democracy, one person or a group of people or an establishment, they talk down to the other people. They use their authority, they use their power, and they don't listen. So if we want to support democracy, we need to support it. Basically, this listening, this mutual listening, and bring people together and make this a primary social and cultural value in the country.
And John Garamendi.
Democracy in the world starts in the United States. Our democracy is under attack. Plain and simple, it is under attack. Trump and the Trumpians are out to do away with the democracy as we know it. My colleagues here have mentioned the states that have imposed restrictions on voting. Also, we must prepare ourselves for a coup in 2024. It's being set up right now by Trump and his allies. It is an extremely important issue. We have to deal with the voting rights legislation that has passed the House of Representatives. 2 bills must be passed by the Senate. It must be done immediately. And in addition to that, we have to deal with the 1887 law that sets out how the Electoral College Commission will function. Trump understands that. He intends to allow the legislatures in those Republican states to set forth their own electors regardless of the votes in those states. Our democracy is at risk here at home. If we don't do it here, the rest of the world will not do it.
Question 5 is, how can we combat inflation? Should gas prices come down considering petroleum's impact on climate change? And we'll start with John Garamendi.
There's absolutely no doubt, even though there are 5 oil refineries in this district, and I'll have to pay attention to that. There is absolutely no doubt that the oil industry is price gouging all the way from the oil fields through the refineries to the shipping to the stations. Just take a look at their quarterly reports. That needs to be addressed. However, as we address that, we have to deal with the other issues of inflation, and they are numerous. The Fed is now increasing interest rates. That's going to lessen it. Also, I'm carrying legislation to make sure that Americans can export their products. This is the supply chain problem, which is another piece of this inflation issue. Complex, but can be solved if we go after the price gouging by the oil companies and others, meat packers included, and then we go after putting in place the alternative ways of dealing with our supply chain and making sure that we make things in America.
Thank you. Christopher Riley.
Mr. Garamendi is absolutely right. We see the corporate profits of the oil companies are coming back. They're tripling and quadrupling their profits from the same time last year. This is price gouging when it comes to oil. They also have thousands of leases to be drilling, but they won't do it because that will bring their profits down. So we need to work out legislation that will take away those leases if they aren't used. When we look at the rest of inflation, we have, half the country is blaming the inflation on stimulus checks for poor Americans, when at the same time, nothing was said about the billions and billions of dollars given to banks or given to corporations through tax cuts. So we can't blame poor people and minorities for inflation when you have hedge funds running wild, treating the stock market like a slot machine, and just absolutely going out of control and over leveraging themselves. And we are coming really close to having another 2008.
Edwin Rutsch.
Yes, I believe we have inflation because of the pandemic. We had a serious pandemic with shutdowns all around the country, And to keep the country from going into the recession, the Fed increased the money supply, and it worked. It kept us going into a serious depression. So I think that was the right decision. But now that we have all that money in the system, the Fed is raising interest rates, and that's going to start taking money out of the system, which I believe will bring down inflation. So that's the core.
Thank you. Cheryl Sudduth.
Read the question, Martha.
Oh, sure. How can we combat inflation? Should gas prices come down considering petroleum's impact on climate change?
So I'm gonna ask your second question first. So yes, gas prices should come down. And I think everybody is agreed on that. However, we can blame the corporations for raising their prices to boost their profits because we already know that. But when the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, says that he acknowledges that giant corporations can raise their prices simply because they can, and we have a federal government, including Congress and Senate, that won't do anything about it, it's time for us to start acting. It's middle-class families, it's working-class families that get the brunt of this. And so we have to stop companies from jacking up their prices just because they can to boost their profits. And it's going to take our congressional officers to have a backbone to say stop. And our president can, with a swoop of a pen, can stop it. And our Congress can stop arguing with each other. And at this point, I do agree with Edwin. They can stop arguing with each other and actually take action instead of just talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roselli.
Yes. Energy independence is what we really truly need more than anything else. We need that energy independence. We're buying oil from overseas to take care of the fuel that we have here. We need to stop doing that. We need energy independence here. We need to find new ways for creating that energy. When you have too much money chasing too few products, that's what's going to cause your inflation to go up. So we need to be able to stop printing money. We need to lower a corporate tax rate. We need to give tax breaks to the people so that companies have the ability to be created. They have the ability to buy their goods without having to spend tons of extra money on taxes. We need to be able to free up our ports and make it possible for all those goods to be able to get out, because if we're not bringing in goods, we're not exporting goods. So we have to be able to find a way to do that. So we need to stop printing the money. We need to bring down the corporate tax rate, and we need to make sure that small businesses have a way for generating their own business.
Well, thank you all. I apologize if I didn't ask a question about your issue, but I'm sure that we'll have other discussions along the way in the future before the June 7th election. We've had somebody telling us that he is a write-in candidate, but with a tightly scheduled format, we really don't have a way to add an additional candidate at this time. Now, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to conclude. The order is the reverse alphabetical order. So we will start with Cheryl Sudduth. Cheryl, you're.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you all again for this forum. Our district deserves leadership. That not only leads by example, yet is on the front lines every day in this district, because this is not just a job. This is my home and you are my neighbors. We're so grateful for the many people who've endorsed this campaign, including ILWU, Local 10, LawPAC, PEU1, the former mayor, Rudy Brown, former mayor, Anderson, former mayor, Eliu Harris, and over 100 elected and appointed officials here in this district and this region, and many, many more working class neighbors. Our district needs strong leadership, directed leadership, leadership that works with everyone in all parts of the district, regardless of where people reside in the district or their party affiliation. A congresswoman who resides here, who understands and champions policies that benefit our communities. Together, we can change Washington by being a voice for the voiceless, by giving power to the powerless. I would be honored to have your support and your vote to make our shared vision of a California that works for everyone a reality. Gracias, League of Women Voters, and gracias to the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Edwin Rutsch.
Yes, as I've talked over and over again, that we need a basic culture shift, and that's what I'm advocating for. And I'm going to continue advocating for it and reach out to different communities. We just reached out to the police. We just had a national police talk to the cops event where we had police from around the country and citizens come together. So the campaign that I am doing is about bringing people together. We've been doing it. We did it, like I said, with some of the other candidates. I hope we're trying to set up another forum to have another in-depth dialogue with other candidates. There's a lot more information you can find out about my campaign and sort of processes and practices that you can take part in at edwinforcongress.com. There are steps there for how you can take part in these empathy circles, because this process that I was talking about is you observe the process. It's the process that you learn. It models how people can really listen to each other and dialogue with each other and understand each other, which builds trust. And from that trust and understanding, we start creating, we can start working on projects together. You need that trust to be able to work together and have creative solutions to our problems. And it means a foundational culture shift. And that's what I am working for, and would love to have your support and to work together with you. Contact me, come to my website. Let's hold some dialogues together in this district.
Thank you. Christopher Riley.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great discussion with all the other candidates. I am running because I think we are at a tipping point in where our country is. We have so many things going on in the future with advancing technology, and we need new voices. It seems to most people that Congress hasn't been working for them for the past 20, 30, 40 years. So we have to ask ourselves, if we don't believe Congress has been working for the people, then why do we keep electing the same people over and over every 2 years? We need new voices. We need new leadership, leaders that lead by service, leaders that care about the community, and leaders that want to be in the community. Leaders that represent the people in their district and are representative of the people of their district. So I am running because I want to be that new voice. We need to start now creating the next generation of congressmen and leaders for the Democratic Party.
Thank you. Rudy Roselli.
Oh, thank you, League of Women Voters, for making this job interview possible for all of us. It's very important that the people know who their candidates are. I am proud to be an American more than anything else. And being an American means that I live in the freest, most prosperous country in the world, even in its current state as it is today. Americans are the most generous as well. And when America is hurting, people step up. And that's why people like all of us here are stepping up to the plate so that we can represent you in Congress. We will not make it out of here we will not make our country better unless if we all try at it. I will be working for the people. I'm not going to be leading the people, because who are my leaders? It's the people. The people are the ones that are going to let me know what their needs are, and I'm going to work very hard in Congress to make that happen. I believe that people want secure borders, not open borders. I believe people want safety and security. I believe that people want lower taxes, not higher taxes. We want more freedom, not government control. The more that we free up our people to do what they know how to do best, the better our country will be. Our Congress and our government is supposed to be there to protect the rights of the people, to make sure that the people are free, to make sure that the people can prosper and live in this country. And I plan on making sure that that happens for our people, because the people are my boss. Thank you.
John Garamendi.
Thank you so very much, and a big thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the other candidates that have been on this call. I value your thoughts, all of you, and look forward to working with all of you, whatever may come of the election. We have an enormous challenge out ahead of us, but I'd like to point out that in the first year of the Biden administration, some extraordinary legislation has passed. The American Rescue Plan not only rescued the American economy by providing support for all kinds of businesses and individuals, and the largest middle-class tax cut ever. It also set the stage for the Infrastructure Jobs Act, which is going to be critically important to the 8th Congressional District that has significant transportation as well as other types of infrastructure issues. In addition to that, we must deal with the climate crisis. It is very real. I've dealt with that my entire career. I've also been a servant of the people. I'll just harken back to my days as insurance commissioner when I took a backwater agency and made it into the best consumer protection agency in the world. And you might ask the victims of the Oakland Hills fire what we did in the 1991 tragedy that occurred there. We protected the consumers. My wife and I were Peace Corps volunteers in Ethiopia. We understand service. We understand poverty. We understand famine. And we understand the way in which government can create problems and can solve problems. I am a problem solver, and I've been at it these many, many years. I thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you tonight, and I seek your support.
Thank you all. These are your 5 candidates for Congressional District 8. Let's give them a hand. Thank you all for attending this evening's forum. I want to thank our co-sponsors, the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa and the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley. And I especially want to thank CCTV for their technical assistance and rebroadcasting these forums. Sean Gilbert, the acting president of the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, has some voters' edge reminders. Sean.
Thank you so much for attending tonight's forum. For more voter information about this election, please visit our voter services website at www.votersedge.org. Candidates have had the opportunity to state their campaign issues and add a link to their website. Excuse me. I want to thank the candidates for all that they've offered, their service, their ideas, and commitment. And I want to thank you, the audience, for attending, engaging, and making it possible for democracy to work. Thank you so much.
And don't forget to vote June 7th.
Yes.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to say thank you to the candidates, to the audience, all of the volunteers. This took a lot to come together and bring everyone together. And I am so humbled and pleased that people were willing to step forward and do that. But I also have to say a special thanks to the moderator, Linda, because she not only took on that role, she literally by herself with no committee organized all of this. And so I must take this moment, to say thank you, Linda. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it so much.
You're welcome.
And everyone else that's been here tonight too. Thank you very much. I wish all of you the best.
Okay, but I do have to give a shout out to Martha, because she did work with me side by side, putting this together. So I want to thank Martha for helping to organize this event, and to both of the leagues for their volunteering and stepping up to the plate when we needed you. So thank you. And we have to do a special thank you to Richard Lee with
Yes.
KCRT. Richard is behind the scenes with the CCTV, helping out, making sure that our forum is running smoothly and that we had a clock to keep you guys on track. So we got to thank Richard for stepping in and doing this. Richard Lee from KCRT and CCTV. Thank all of you. Thank you very much. And all of our candidates. Thank you.
Thank you so much.